Hey everyone, my name is Hayden and welcome to my channel. If you're new here, I'm a full-time software engineer based in London. In this video, we're going to talk about where to start when building your first app. So the reason I wanted to make this video is that a friend of mine texted me to say that she had a friend that was building an app and she wanted my advice about what route to go down and how would you go about building one. So I composed her a long text and sent it back to her, obviously with all the information in it. And I thought this was a perfect opportunity to make a video about this topic as well, because probably going to get asked this question again and probably there's people out there that don't know. So I thought I'd share this information with you guys. So first off, let's clarify what an app is. It's basically just some code that runs on your phone. It's just a little application. You're sure you have many of them, but there's many different ways of implementing them, and I'll go through the kind of three main ones. So you have basically three types of apps or three options that you can go down depending on what your use case is. The first and kind of the most simplest option is what's known as a web app, which is basically if you take a website and you scale the screen down to a phone size, that's what you'll get. So obviously when you're building your website, you have to take into account, when it scales down to the tiny screen of a phone, how responsive is your website. These are called web apps. They don't really offer anything more than just kind of native HTML code, but they're a really quick, simple, easy way to kind of make it cross-platform and implement kind of a very basic app. Downsides of this is that you don't get kind of nice features. You don't get features that you would with different implementations of building an app, such as if you built it in native code, and then you can do things like notifications and do little banners and little red notification icons. You won't get that if you're building it in a web app, because obviously your web browser doesn't have access to that information, and that's all your app is just a scaled down version of a website. I'll show you a quick example of this here. So this is a good website that explains kind of what a mobile web app is. It just refers to an application that only requires the web browser to be installed on your device. An example of this is Instagram here. So obviously if you see this is Instagram web, and if I change to the mobile phone size in developer tools, all you can see is this is just a scaled down version of Instagram. There's no kind of special stuff happening here. It runs in your browser. If you just log on Instagram on Safari or Chrome on your phone, you would get, this is exactly what you get. All it is just HTML code scaled down, and you can see I can change the size to different phones and it just scales how big the content is. So this is the kind of quickest and simplest way in order to make your website into an app, is just by scaling it down and making sure it's responsive. But the thing that's not so good about this is you don't get access to a lot of kind of native stuff on phones, like notifications, push notifications, location settings and stuff that will be on your phone. In order to do this, you need to write what's known as a native application. This is native code that runs on your phone, and your phone knows how to understand that and then put that into all the features that you can do. Problem with this is that obviously with iOS and Android you have two architectures of phones, and you can't write iOS code that will run on Android, and you can't write Android that will run on an iOS phone. The advantage of a web app is that you write HTML code once, it works on a website, and you scale it down, it works on a browser, but you lose out on kind of lots of native functionality. Whereas if you write it in native code using Swift or Objective-C that will actually run natively on the phone you're running on, you have to maintain two code bases, one for iOS and one for Android, and you can't run each one on each other. So that means every feature you push out, you have to make the change on iOS and then make it on Android. So you're like basically duplicating your effort. But what you do get is that the app will run faster because it's the native code for that architecture you're running on, and you have a lot of access to lots more features that you wouldn't get on a web app. So there's many examples of this. If you go on the App Store, any app that you basically install that doesn't run through Safari, that installs onto your phone, will be probably a native app. So if you ever see on a website that only available on iOS or only available on Android or coming soon, that means that they've made the app in that language, and now they're rewriting it all over again in a different language so they can offer it on both platforms. So there's one more other type of app which is called like a hybrid app, which is not native, not a web app, but takes code and will try and compile it into native code for when you're running on different architectures. So a really popular framework for this is something called React Native. So if you're familiar with React for writing websites, it's basically the same but for mobile apps. What basically happens here is that it will take the code that you write in, say, React Native, and then you can build it out to run, build out an app for iOS and build out an app for Android. The advantage of this again is kind of what the disadvantage of running natively is. You have one code base, you build it twice for iOS or Android, and then you have what's natively compiled code as best that they can do. Obviously it's not true native, it won't be exactly the same as writing the actual native code yourself, but it will be pretty close. And React Native is a very popular framework, and it's obviously maintained by Facebook, and it is, you know, constantly pushing out more and more changes. So, and there's a big community for it, so it is pretty good. It is very popular. So you can see here on the React Native website, it's written in JavaScript but rendered to native code. So you can see with React Native, one team can maintain 2 platforms because they share the same code base. And you can see you basically just write JavaScript, and then under the hood it will compile it to the source or the architecture that you're trying to run on. So pros of this are that, again, one code base, 2 platforms that you're building out from, but cons is you don't, again, get access to the native stuff, but there are lots and lots and lots of clever libraries and people out there that have actually built wrappers around that, so you do get as close as you can really get without writing native code. So I would really recommend this if you're kind of a single developer building an app for yourself. It's just a super simple way of doing it this way. I think it looks better than a web app, but obviously you don't have to learn 2 new coding languages. So yeah, the final kind of thing I want to bring on is just kind of a summary here of features. So this is features of what you can do in each language. Obviously a web app is basically just a website, so you only get the same features as you would as any website. Hybrid app, you get the mix of both because it's got more features than a web app, but not as much as native, whereas native obviously you have the most. And then speed wise as well. So yeah, I'm going to rename this to not speed, because speed, obviously your native code would be the fastest thing to implement because it runs natively on that architecture, whereas a web app and a hybrid app wouldn't, because they need to be compiled. Well, hybrid app would be quite good because it does get compiled to native code, but you know, a web app wouldn't. But I'm just talking about speed of development here. So as for example, myself, a single developer, if I was to you know, get a project where I needed to build an app, I wouldn't go native because I would have to, you know, every feature I write, I would have to write that in, you know, iOS and Android, and repeat myself, and, you know, basically double the amount of work, because I have to maintain 2 code bases and 2 different bugs and all this kind of stuff. A web app is obviously the speediest because you can basically just write a website, and if you write it cleverly enough and scale it down to a phone screen, you know, your speed of development, you've only, you know, done once there. Whereas obviously a hybrid, you do have to write it in React Native, which isn't exactly the same as React. So you would, again, like, you know, it's not a website, but what you do get here is that you write your app in one language and it can get compiled out to iOS or Android. So yeah, these are kind of like, depending on what you're looking for. If you're looking for the easiest, quickest way and speediest way to get stuff out there, I would go for a web app, but it doesn't look as good. So personally, if you want something that's quick, but looks better and you get more features, definitely a hybrid app like React Native. But if it's a long-term project and you're really thinking, you know, I want all the features, it needs to have everything I need it to do, then I would go for a native iOS app. But obviously, again, it takes longer to develop and time, but this is probably more for like businesses and companies. React Native is great. Again, it's for business and companies, like you can still use it, but lots of solo developers use it. And then a web app is kind of your last resort because you don't get as many features. Cool, there we go. So hopefully you have a better understanding now of the different types of apps and what you can use. You've got web apps, hybrid apps and native apps, and depending on your use case, you know, obviously it will depend on what one you pick. I'd be interested to know what app ideas or what ones you think are best for your use case, so do comment below and let me know. If you found this video useful, please give me a thumbs up, it really helps me out. If you have any questions, obviously again, drop a comment down below. I hope you found this video useful and have a great day.